So, good afternoon. We're starting with the meetup right now. Welcome to our Lisk Community meetups. It's a weekly meetup gathering, and we will talk about IDs, proof of concepts, the Lisk technology, some news from the community also. So if you have IDs or if you want to share something, just let us know, and then we will try to put it in the meetup. So first, are thinking about creating a proof of concept, subscribe to the Lisk Builders program. And today we are going to talk about Lisk recurring payments. It's a proof of concept made by the Moosty team among myself. So just like last week, I will be talking a large part, actually the whole part. We do not have a lot of news to share, except for the fact that Lisk published, or I think BTC Echo published an article about Lisk and the journey they made the last couple of years. It's a really good story. I read it yesterday and it's a good read. Some insight in the company, where they come from and where they go. I think it's really interesting article. And there were also some talks about the SDK 4.0 and 5.0 and just I think there have been some changes on the GitHub, so keep an eye on the GitHub of the Lisk SDK. So we are going to talk about the proof of concept we made, recurring payments. It's actually a separate blockchain made with the Lisk SDK, and it's a proof of concept to show how you could create peer-to-peer contracts between pairs. So it doesn't really matter what the contract should look like. It's a pretty flexible concept, and you could, for example, rent a bike, or yeah, there are multiple examples possible. I will walk you through one example of renting a bike, and afterwards we can brainstorm about all the other possibilities. So first, a quick introduction. It is part of the Lisk Builders program, so you could read a blog about it on the lisk.io website. We made a user interface, a front end, and we made back end working custom transactions. I will not elaborate on it today, except for the transactions, of course. So we have 5 specific proof of concept related custom transactions, and we are using the faucet transaction. Let me walk you through it from the top to the bottom. At first, you have to create a contract. The custom transaction of creating a contract creates an account on the blockchain. Afterwards, someone has to accept that contract, or the other peer have to accept, or maybe wants to change something, reviews the contract, and that updates the account. Then one of the two has to fund the contract. Afterwards, you can withdraw tokens or terminate the contract. And the faucet transaction provides wallet tokens to your wallet, a username. That's for everybody who creates an account. So you can create an account for yourself, then the faucet transaction gives you tokens, and the other custom transactions are contract specific. So let's walk you through it. For this case, we are going to use the example of renting a bike. So we have John and we have Jane here. John has a bike and he wants to rent it to other people, and Jane wants to rent a bike. So Jane wants to rent a bike and takes the bike of John and wants to make a tour in Utrecht, for example. Maybe she comes from Amsterdam, goes to Utrecht, rents a bike for a couple of hours, and then returns it when she goes back to Amsterdam. So at first, what do you see here? You see that we created 2 accounts. There are 2 separate wallets which are going to create a contract together. On the left, you see an arrow. It points to the faucet transaction. Because we are working with a blockchain, we have a 10 seconds block time. So the transaction is pending currently, and after 10 seconds, you receive your tokens. What you see here right now is that we sent actually 100 tokens, but automatically the faucet transaction pays a fee for that transaction, so you receive 99.9 tokens. Taking a look at the app, at the bottom we see 3 different tabs: Overview, Contracts, or Create Contract. Push the Create Contract button, you will see this pop-up. This pop-up, you can create a contract with somebody else. So, quick walkthrough, you give it a name, the different peers who create a contract together, and over which a payment will be made. I will go in depth during the next slide. So once again, the concept is to create a contract with a time lock. So what we have is 2 different persons creating a contract together. They create a contract for a specific amount of periods, and one of the persons puts money in vault, and the other person is able to withdraw that money over certain periods. So, for example, Jane wants to rent a bike. She creates a contract. The contract name is rent a bike. The sender payment is Jane because she is going to pay for that bike. The recipient is John because the bike is John. A payment will be made every 15 minutes, the period, and the contract duration is 16 payments. For example, this is 4 hours. So Jane wants to rent the bike for 4 hours. Per payment, she pays 1 token, so 4 tokens per hour, and a short fee is added. The short fee is the termination fee. What do you pay if the contract is ended? And the minimal units to activate is how many units do you have to pay up front before you can start the contract. And she added a note also, bike number 6, or John added a note. If you click on create contract, you will receive a message, send transaction, and if it's accepted by the blockchain network, then you get this message that it is accepted. So how does it look like on the blockchain? What I said before, create a contract. The contract automatically is an account on the blockchain. Like user creates an account on the blockchain, but if the contract custom transaction also creates an account on the blockchain. The difference between those 2 accounts is that the contract does not have a certain private key attached to it. At the moment you create a contract, you also provide it with some assets. We see on the right side currently which are the assets that have been created within the contract account. So we see the first one is, I will just walk you through quickly. At first you see revision, that's 0. It means if I create a contract and the other person does not agree directly but changes something, then I can review it again, and the revisions we can make, and every time a revision is made, the number is incremented. So at the second line you see type, it's a recurring payment contract, so that's the name of the custom transaction. Then you see unit. Unit is actually the same, you should see it the same as period. So how many periods, what kind of periods are created? In this case, we used minutes. We used 16 periods, an amount of 1 token. You have to prepay them. You prepaid 16. before the contract is activated. The type amount is again the amount of the amount of minutes in this case, and the termination fee is 4. So underneath you see when does the contract start and what is the status of the contract. Currently, the contract is under review of the sender, and it has a title, payment. You should watch is the two sender public key and recipient public key. Those are the two public keys between the contract is created. If 2 persons registered blockchain, 2 accounts with a public key, and the sender and recipient have a contract together. So in this case, we have sender and recipient, which are John and Jane. So what happens? We created a contract, or John or Jane created a contract. See, both of them receive a contract in their wallet. Left you see the contract rent a bike, and you see awaiting review from Jane. We see Jane awaiting your review. So if both of them click on view contract, then they will see this respectively. John sees content of the contract, sees the content of the contract, but she also sees a button with review contract. So she has to review the contract if she agrees. If you want to review the contract, it would be nice if you could read it. So we also added a human readable contract. What does it say? The title, rent a bike. The public key, which is the account of this contract on the blockchain. The sender, Jane. The recipient, John. That means the sender of money, tokens, and the recipient, John, the recipient of the tokens. Contract duration is 240 minutes, which is 4 hours. 15 minutes, a payment request can be made of 1 token to John. So every 15 minutes, John can withdraw 1 token. The termination fee is 4 payments, 4 times 15, 1 hour in this case. And the minimum activation fee is 16 payments or 16 tokens. We also see the extra note. So if Jane reviews the contract, she gets this screen, and she can alter some information if that's needed, or she can just accept the contract as is. So if you accept the contract is finalized and will be sent to the blockchain, and both of them will again see a change in their wallet. We see that the icon is changed, so both of them have a green in their contract, and the contract is activated. Also, Jane sees a large picture that she needs to fund the contract, because she needs to fund the 16 periods prepaid before the contract is activated. She can only rent the bike and use the bike if she has paid upfront. So that's you can see it as a deposit. This is what John sees. John can also see the contract. It doesn't really yet, but both can see what happens. Jane needs to fund the contract before it's activated. She can pay the funds here, and if she gets a pop-up if she wants to fund the contract, yes or no. And what happens next is that we see green 16 of 16, which means that the vault or the funds have been transferred to the contract. John sees when his next payment arrives. like after 15 minutes, he's able to withdraw 1 token from the contract, and Jane can use the bike. So if you combine this, for example, with a Lisk bike concept, then you would have a smart lock, and at this point, Jane has funded the contract, the lock will open, and she's able to use the bike during this period. We see that John is able to withdraw a next payment in 15 minutes. Both of them, if you take a look at the overview, you see on the bottom you can create a contract, but you can also see the overview in your wallet, and there you see all the transactions made. So if we take a look at John, John is working from home, has put his bike on the network, and Jane is riding her bike. After 15 minutes, he's able to withdraw the first payment. So if he wants to do that, he clicks on withdraw. He needs to await confirmation from the blockchain for 10 seconds. And what happens then, the back end, is that a payment will be made from the contract to John. So he activates it himself, and the account of the contract is updated. If we take a look at the code underneath, see the actual, what does it say, the time lock code. So this is what we are using actually to calculate moments the John can withdraw his payments. So what happens? John withdraws a token. We see it is added to his wallet, and we also see that a next payment will be ready 14 minutes. Again, this is the overview. Both of them, you can see it as a private personal explorer. Like every transaction you make is visible in your overview. Second time, if we take a look at John currently, we see that on the right side from the arrow, there are 2 tokens ready to withdraw. That means that 30 minutes, and he does not have to withdraw the tokens every time a period has ended. And also withdraw the total amount at once, because it's locked for him, and he can take it whenever he wants to. Also a difference, because we are using dynamic fees on the back end. Every time you withdraw, every time you you create a transaction or use the network, different fees are calculated. So there's a difference between withdrawing 1 token or 2 tokens, or different transactions that are made to the blockchain. That's also the reason you see the crazy numbers. It's not only 0.1 like the normal Lisk blockchain. It calculates a fee, a dynamic fee per transaction. We also see within your contract how many payments are ready to be withdrawn. But for example, so we see here that John has received 2 tokens again, and maybe Jane wants to go back to Amsterdam, so she wants to quit the contract with the bike because she doesn't need it anymore. She terminates the contract. What happens, what we know was there was a termination fee of 4 tokens, so 1 hour. So she will pay another 4 tokens, and then the contract will be ended. So what happens is that 4 tokens will be transferred to John, and the rest of the tokens that are left in the wallet, in the vault, will be transferred back to Jane, and the contract itself is ended. Are you sure you want to terminate this contract? Yes, I'm fairly sure. And what happens next? So here we see it in the assets, the termination fee of 4, and Jane has terminated the contract. So the status of the account on the blockchain has changed. So we see here, John has 106 tokens and Jane has 2 again. So if you take a look at the wallet of Jane on the right side, you see that every action has been recorded on the blockchain. The contract has been created, it has been reviewed, it has been funded, and payment requests have been made, and it has been terminated. That gives a nice overview of all the actions created on the blockchain. This contract specifically. So again, we see the wallets of both of them with an overview of all actions. And actually that's I think that's the most important thing of recurring payments demo. The idea behind it is that you can create peer-to-peer contracts, and it is a flexible solution that you can use it for whatever you think it is suitable for. 2 persons, A and B, and you create a vault, and the other person can withdraw tokens from it. You can difference if you take the bike example. So if I would like to rent my bike, but I'm a little bit of scared because I have a very expensive bike, then I can also say, okay, you have to pay a larger deposit fee before you rent it. So because this is a proof of concept, there are still a lot of changes to be made in the future, but it can also be used for different occasions. This thing is not related to our recurring payments, but is more related to the Lisk blockchain. So what we see over here is that an account on the blockchain can be owned in multiple ways. An account has a public key, so has a base 32 address and a binary address. Created a method in which you can retrieve all the different kind of addresses within the Lisk blockchain. So in this case, you can click on the arrow and you can find which binary address relates to your base 32 address or your public key. And on the right side at Jane, you also see an example of that. We also have a tool that creates those different addresses, and we'll share the link in the Discord. So why would it be beneficial to create such a simple proof of concept, for example, or why would it be beneficial to create proof of concepts or custom transactions at all? Actually, what you see over here. So if you are creating a Lisk application, then you make use of the import function, and you can actually fairly easily import custom transactions made by anybody else. Currently on the top, the second until the 8th line, you see the different custom transactions used for Lisk recurring payments. But also at line to 11, you see Lisk Sprinkler. That's a sprinkler transaction which we use as our faucet transaction, and we are reusing that every time we create an application. So the only thing you have to do is import it and use it or register it at line 19, see, and then you are able to use the sprinkler transaction in your application. So that does not only work for the faucet transaction, but in the future it will also work for recurring payment transaction, extended API, or maybe other transactions that you are creating. So here's a list of we forgot to text. but here's a list of links. At first, you see the proof of concept. We have a blog, we have a demo, also the transactions and the front end. The demo is also part of the Lisk blockchain application, so the lisk.io/apps page, and also added the open custom transactions registry. So if you would like to see what transactions we made and how you can reuse them, just click on that link and you can see all the transactions registered. If you would like to use the address converter, which I told you about at the last slide, you see the last link address converter. And this is a small note about dynamic fees. I think we're on then. Does anybody has any questions about recurring payments? Komen er vragen? Oh. So we got one question. Take a look at. Can you hear me now? Ja, en nu? Take a look at the right side of the slide. You see asset, underneath you see unit, then you see type, total amount, prepaid, type amount, determination fee. What we create over there is that actually is the period a payment is made. So you can create your own period. In this case, for example, we use the bike example, renting a bike. We say every 15 minutes, someone needs to pay a fee. So the period then is every 15 minutes. But you can also say we make the period 1 hour. Then underneath unit, you will have type, might be minutes again. And the type amount will be 60. Then you can create an hour, and then every hour a payment or token withdrawal made. So if we take it a little bit broader, for example, if you have salary, if you work for someone, or then it might be a suitable period to have a month, to have something to pay him a month. Then you could say every month you can get you can create a token request. In that case, you could say that a type would be a month, and every month you can withdraw an X amount of tokens, and we create a contract for 12 months for 1 year. So in that case, the unit describes the specific period and also the total amount of periods you are creating the contract with, and also the amount per period that you can withdraw. Actually, I think it would be better to say the unit are the details for the contract the time the contract is created for. Would that be clear? Um, yeah. I get a question. If I understand correctly, when a person rents a bike with 60 units, payment is processed every 15 minutes. What about prepaid? What is that? I will once walk you through the left side of the screen. You see underneath John, you see a payment will be made every 15 minutes. So in this case, we chose the 15 and the minutes ourselves. You can also make it minutes, hours, or days. And so if you look at the contract, it would be easier to take a look at the left, because the word unit doesn't really resemble anything in our contract. Sorry about that. Maybe it's my confusion. But you see, a payment will be made every 15 minutes. Contract duration in payments is 16. So that means that we have 16 periods, 15 minutes. So if we say, actually, that would be 4 hours. We have 4 payments per hour, and we have 16 payments in total. And every time a payment can be made is 50 minutes, and you can request 1 token. So you can request 4 tokens per hour. And the short fee means the termination fee. If I terminate the contract now, then I would have to pay another 4 periods. So in this case, it would be another 4 times 15 minutes. So in this case, 1 hour. It can be a little bit to read it like this. That's the reason why we created a more human readable version of the contract. You fill in a contract, automatically you get a version like this, and it gives you a better readable version. I hope I answered your question. Prepaid. Prepaid is the amount of periods you have to pay upfront. So before the contract is activated, you have to pay a certain amount of tokens. And in this case, on the left side, you see minimal units to activate. That is actually the prepaid amount of units you have to pay before the contract is activated. So in this example, we say you have to pay 16 periods, which is the whole contract duration. You could also say you only have to prepay 2 periods or 4 periods, and then every time the contract is empty, you have to refill the contract before the other one can all his tokens. Perfect. If there are any more questions, just post them in the general chat and we will try to answer them. For now, I don't think I have anything else to say except for the fact that we are very curious what you think of these meetups. If you want to see other things, if you want to talk, or if you are interested in other proof of concepts that we can dive into, just let us know. Send us a message or try it through the Lisk general chat. And then we'll try to get someone in the studio or try to find out how a proof of concept works. Also, if there are topics that you would like to get to know, just leave us a message. And I think that's it for now. Let's check if there are any more questions, and otherwise move on. Then I will say goodbye and see you next week.